Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our panel discussion number 5 of this day. And unfortunately, the last discussion, I would say, but that said, our topic is going to be cognitive diversity, overcoming confirmation bias and unconscious bias for a common goal. And to moderate this session, I'm now going to introduce you all to Mr. K.M. Murli, Senior Director, Human Resources and Alliances, NTT Limited, our panelist, Gautam Chainani, President, HR Strategic Initiatives and Workforce, GSW, Rajendra Mehta, President and CHRO, Welspun India Limited, Swati Datye, Head HR, Wholesale Banking and Support, Talent Diversity and Inclusion, Campus, RBL Bank, Anuradha Khosla, VP HR, Head DNI, Leadership Development and Employee Engagement, HCL Technologies, Anupama Sharma, Executive Director, Kotak Mahindra. I would now request Mr. Modi to please take over.
Thank you, Ankita. Welcome to everybody, to the panelists, as well as everybody who's here today in this session. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here today. What I'm going to do is give a little bit of an introduction, setting a little bit of context to this topic. I'll take about 5 minutes, following which I'll have a set of questions for the panelists. We'll go around listening to them, listening to the expert views that they have to share with us. And if time permits, somewhere during the course of the session, we'll be happy to take some audience questions as well. All right. So let me get into the introduction about the topic right now. Traditionally, when you think of diversity, chances are that you're referring to gender, race, sexual orientation, ethnicity, etc. However, in the true sense of the word, diversity is really the range of human differences and refers to differences between individuals on any attribute that may lead to perception that one person is different from another. It's therefore not limited to any one type and can be categorized by any factor that leads to individual differences. There's a misconception that persists about diversity, and that's an important misconception. The common belief is that if you put a group of people around a table, say a heterosexual man and woman, a person with a different ethnic background, a person from another sexual orientation, all at different stages in life, that you will get diversity of thought. But that's simply not the case, because they could all have very dissimilar thinking styles and preferences. Cognitive diversity is recognizing that all of us have different ways of gathering and processing information, of making decisions and communicating. It's more than just gender or ethnicity, and it really comes down to personality. It's about tapping into different ways, into the different ways we think, and harnessing that to unlock solutions and solve problems. This is true both at work and in society. It's also important to note that differences in diversity can be divided into two broad categories: surface level and deep level. Cognitive diversity relates to differences in deep level or non-observable characteristics of members, including knowledge, perspectives, information processing styles, and so on. So this makes recognizing, understanding, and leveraging cognitive diversity more difficult, and yet very rewarding when done right. The diverse nature of modern workforce and the emphasis on work groups and teams and organizations makes the understanding of the effects of diversity on team performance important. Workforce demographics are also defining both the understanding and perceptions of cognitive diversity. For example, Millennials view cognitive diversity as a blending of different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives within a team, and view cognitive diversity as a necessary element for innovation. Studies actually show that they're about 71% more likely to focus on teamwork. Baby boomers and Gen Xers, on the other hand, view diversity as a representation of fairness and protection to all, regardless of all the characteristics and attributes that I spoke about earlier, like gender, race, etc. Clearly, this difference in perception of the very definition implies that within organizations, expectations of different people across demographic profiles could be very different, making it incumbent upon the organization and its leaders to recognize the differences and leverage the opportunities they present, even while managing the challenges that come up. Embracing cognitive diversity is a transformational change for most organizations. And as with all transformational changes, starts from the top. Assessing the cognitive style of leaders and understanding how leaders behave and why, and identifying and challenging entrenched thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions is the key. This is deeply reflective work, questioning how you gather information and make decisions, how intuitive you are, and whether you are people-oriented or more rational and analytical. But one thing is for sure, cognitive diversity clearly brings benefits. It has a bearing on productivity, leadership effectiveness, and efficiency, because you're solving problems collectively and by sitting around a table with diversity of thought. And then, of course, the benefit also comes with engagement of employees and what it feels like to be valued. The concern, however, today stems from the fact that companies don't know what they stand to lose by not investing in or embracing cognitive diversity. While they may be fine in the short term, they may stand to lose in the long term, because research shows that people want more from their employers than the traditional definitions. The question now is how organizations harness the potential of cognitive diversity and what needs to be done to move the needle. So now let me quickly get into the question session, which you've been waiting for. I'd like to start by posing this question to Rajendra. And the question is, what is the level of awareness in organizations today on cognitive diversity? Are organizations consciously making efforts to think about and bring organizational diversity to their organization? And if so, how? And what do you think are some of the common hurdles to establishing cognitive diversity in organizations? And how does an organization go about overcoming them? So there are it's a multi-part question, but they're all some way related to each other. So let me start with you, Rajendra.
Yeah, so thank you, Murli. And I think, rightly during the whole context setting, you have mentioned very clearly that, we remain at a very surface level with respect to managing the diversity. And we have remained, largely organizations have remained around the area of number of women employees, number of LGBTs, number of specially abled, and we have tracked the very surface level numbers. But did organizations ever look at the ascents and descents that actually come by in the conversations or in the process of decision making? I think these are some of the outcomes we have never measured. And the essential element that we believe is important for us is to surely get, the measure on these lines rather than on numbers. So that's the first point. In my mind, I think organizations aren't enough aware with respect to the bringing in cognitive diversity on board. And my sense is that even if 30% of the organizations are prepared with respect to diversity agenda, they are remaining around this whole number game and surface level issues. So, and fortunately for us, I think, we work, our 90% of the business is overseas, 10% of business in India. Now, that puts us in some advantage because, we deal with the partners like Walmart of the world and IKEAs of the world. And I think US as a geography has, they are at a very inflection point where from a very capitalistic organization structure, they're now moving towards the whole area of, sustainability and service towards the community at large. So they are at that inflection point, and we by force or by choice we have this whole area to live with and work towards that. So from a number point of view, if you look at, we are at Welspun India, we are roughly about 30% women population. So numbers I can count across all different how many. So those numbers are there, but we also need to travel the journey with respect to, did we have any framework which measures their contribution in terms of decision makings? Or if they had a dissent on certain areas, did we measure that? And what did we do with that? Did we celebrate their contributions in terms of decision making or no? whether it was right or wrong, that's a different issue. So from our point of view, we are there, and I think we have done enough and good work. The other advantage for us is that we have embarked on the journey of ESG. So that framework is what we are on board with and following that. So what it does to us is, for an enterprise to sustain long term, the whole framework of ESG and following that to the T will help us to cross through the journey well. So I think structurally organizations need to create certain frameworks and run with certain tangible agendas which are far more deeper in its nature rather than a surface level discussions that we keep doing. So that's sorry, you're on a mute, I guess.
No, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So from an organization's point of view, I think we need to really move in that direction. Most of us probably are far behind, but it is important to bring cognitive diversity on board. And when we talk about the various elements of the organization, whether it's board, CEOs, apex, councils, etc., the fit for purpose need to define the fit for purpose board, fit for purpose CEO, fit for purpose multiple elements in the organizations must define what is the diversity expectations, the aspirations that the organization has. So
wonderful.
So those are my thoughts on this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rajendra. A lot of interesting, useful points. You talked of a framework. You talked of it being surface level. You talked of it being where you bringing in the traditional definitions in, but then are you even in those circumstances involving people in decision making? Are you valuing the decisions? Are you overtly and explicitly talking about those decisions that are coming in, or those dissents that are coming in? Wonderful. Let me pose the same question to one more person. Swati, if you can tell us a little bit about what you how you see this.
So thanks, Murli. While I agree with Rajendra that we as organizations don't really measure cognitive diversity, and most of us are still caught in the whole gender, LGBT, and around all of that space, which is also required. But while I agree that cognitive diversity is not being measured, I also believe that there is something that all of us are doing in our own ways without measuring it. Otherwise, we would not have seen the growth in innovations, the growth in organizations happening. Because I think, while we may not have formally spoken about cognitive diversity the way we are doing today, in organizations, you do see senior managers, you do see leaders who are reaching out to people from different parts of organizations to hear them out. Now, these could be seen as coffee sessions and, good to do sessions, but they all have a purpose. The purpose is to listen to contrary views. And that can obviously happen when it is in a non-threatening environment. But the essence of these kind of sessions is to hear contrary views, hear very different views. And if that was not happening in organizations, you would not have seen things like digital banking growing in the space. And I'm talking because I'm from the banking industry. But you would not have seen the kind of innovation that the banking industry has taken in the last few years. We can always say it was because the push of the market, but the fact is that you had to come up with these different ideas, different ways of working, bring in different technologies. So there is something going on, right? We've done it without putting the pin on the wall. So that was my 2-bit for now.
No, it's very true. I think there is definitely most organizations have elements of this in place. The question now, I think, is this what is being done sort of subconsciously or in a superficial way, perhaps, if it would be a little strong. Is that something that can be channeled as a concerted effort, being conscious, being one that you measure? Would that lead to significantly increased outcomes or benefits to organization? I think that's the question.
It would be interesting to look at what companies like IKEA are doing. IKEA is known for its innovations. It's known for bringing in very different practices. And it might be interesting if some of my other panel members have an insight if they could share. But clearly there are organizations who are setting on that path. Research R&D organizations. You would be able to get an innovation only when you welcome different thoughts.
Sure. Let me go to Anupama quickly. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thanks, Murli. I think, I would echo Swati and Rajendra's thoughts. Clearly, what I also believe in additionally that, every organization today, in order to be successful, has to embrace cognitive diversity. While I agree with Swati that that's something that's probably not getting measured, but I think the culture of the firm clearly defines cognitive diversity. So today, as an organization, if I encourage collective thinking and, and if my employees or my one-downs can kind of get up and in any forum kind of express their thoughts freely without, being under pressure that would they be questioned to having expressed their thought, even if it's against their supervisor, against the leadership team, against management, then I think it's true cognitive diversity, right? Because you're promoting collective thinking, you're promoting innovation as well, because today when, and I say this because I'm in a leadership role. I think a lot of the panelists here are from HR, and, when I kind of, we've been hiring pretty aggressively and, in our business. And when we kind of look at hiring people, one thing that I see HR focus on is to ensure that you get diverse group of employees working with you. So this could be across genders, across age groups, across specialists. So today, if I'm hiring people in the sales role, we are very open to looking at people coming from a business background as well, or from a product background. So why do we do that? Because sometimes you think that, okay, it's better to get someone who thinks out of the box, thinks differently than a typical salesperson does, and that will add value. So I think the culture of the organization. So today, as a firm, I may not have a policy for cognitive diversity. But clearly, I'm 200% sure that we follow it to the T, and that's why we are where we are today. And I think that's very, very important because to promote an open culture, to allow people to let their views and let it be a two-way discussion. I think it will automatically kind of help organizations grow and kind of think differently.
I think you used an absolutely relevant and important word. It is tied to organization culture. Why some organizations have already done it, maybe not consciously, not using the word cognitive diversity, but are already doing elements of it. It's because the culture of that organization is such that it encourages thought, encourages dissent, and that's what leads to innovation, as you pointed out, right? And I think that culture is what was perhaps culture today has to be taken to the next level, where you go beyond it being something that's just culture, but it's a concerted effort, which I talked about earlier. Let me change tack a little bit. Let me ask a slightly different question, and let me go to Gautam with this question. Gautam, I heard the word metrics, and I heard the fact, I heard that, we're not really necessarily measuring it. Do you believe that there's a place for technology, tools, and analytics in helping organizations enhance their cognitive diversity posture? And I think you kind of touched upon this, Anupama. Are we hiring today, recruiting for cognitive diversity? Are organizations, when they look at hiring, are they going by the age-old traditional ways of looking at past experience, past academic background, or are they looking for something different? I recently came across a tool that looks at predictive intelligence.
Absolutely.
Ensure zero bias.
That's right.
What do you think, Gautam?
So I think, Murli, I think that's a very good question. And I think that, I believe that technology today is accelerating at such a large pace that we humans can hardly comprehend. And the pace of change, which is on account of technology, is driving organizations to focus more on using teams to resolve problems rather than individual excellence. So it's more like teams which are driving innovation and creativity rather than individuals. Now, the issue is, like what you rightly said, is that when teams are homogeneous, right, the outcomes or the answers also get very predictable. And that predictable answers don't actually give you the solutions of what the problem is today. Now, there's an interesting book written by Matthew Syed, and that book is called Rebel Ideas. And it's in that book, he talks of an interesting situation where he says that one of the reasons why 9/11 occurred was because the CIA hired homogeneous teams at that point in time. And those guys as a group could never think that somebody could, get a plane and bang it right into a tower, even though, they had information 2 months prior to the attack that something imminent and big was going to happen. And it's just coincidental that if you look at Prime today, there's a lovely serial called The Looming Tower, right, which talks about a similar situation of CIA and FBI, and about how CIA and FBI really never collaborated and this thing happened. So the two elements, of groupthink and non-collaboration, how toxic it can become for any organization, is really what is brought about by that book and that serial. I think the other thing that we need to look at, we need to really differentiate perception from cognition. I think perception, like what you said, is by definition how an individual captures information needed for processing, right? And from an AI and from an ML perspective today, there's a lot of unbiased data that's getting available and a lot of data that is getting sliced in many different forms of fashion, right? So an individual's ability to capture and assimilate that data becomes extremely important. Cognition, on the other hand, means that how an individual or team uses information, right? And that depends on what or how is the person or the team's value, the thinking styles, the problem-solving orientation, that speed of thinking, and whether it's left brain thinking, right brain thinking, and so on and so forth. So I think these are two things that become very, very critical. And the point that Anupama was also making, is that we have to look at cognitive diversity from a background of cultural diversity. And, cultural diversity today means how much that an organization support and encourage different views. How much is a supervisor willing to hire somebody who's very different from him? And how much is a team willing to support, different views and not just write it off or, throw it by the side. That becomes important. So, you have cognitive diversity, but below that, you have to have a strong foundation of cultural diversity, which the organization needs to drive, right? And to the point, I think, to summarize, I think the opportunities on using tools and analytics are humongous and enormous. And I think that these tools and analytics will help us, identify and hire a cognitive diverse workforce, right? And we will know right from the beginning with what skills or traits that they come from. But, this will have to be backed by an organization's support of the culture that is needed to, get diversity flourish in the organization.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Gautam. I couldn't agree more. I think the opportunity that is presented in front of us is really large. And there's never been a better time than now to be able to leverage technologies and all the tools and information gathering sources that we have to be able to put this to best use. Let me go to Anuradha and Anuradha, have you? What are your thoughts in terms of how organizations can use technology and intelligence and data? Data analytics is a big thing. Everybody is using data analytics. It is really the most powerful weapon in everybody's arsenal. But are they looking at using it to create an organization that is cognitively diverse? Is that something that you're seeing? What's your take?
Sure. Thanks, Murli. That surely is a pertinent point. And cognitive diversity, in the workplace means that all differences are leveraged by leaders to answer key business questions, because there are situations, we used to talk theoretically about a VUCA world where things are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and here we are in that VUCA world. So you have the situation there, you have an opportunity to leverage cognitive diversity to answer some of the key business questions. So it might sound complex, but surely there are several technologies that are available to make it much easier. And what are we making much easier? We're basically making, we're putting into practice the art of thinking independently together. There are multiple individuals who are thinking independently, but we are trying to make them think together now. And we are also encouraging, using technology, we should be encouraging people to, talk with people who probably make you see the world differently. So, and can I encourage that with the use of apt technology through communities of practice, etc., where I could reach out to people who will make me see the world differently and therefore look at different solutions. So it is, as the other panelists said, that innovation, of course, couldn't have happened if this wasn't there. There are seeds of it there, but to run it in a structured manner, probably now is the right time. There is surely strength in it, in cognitive diversity, and it will definitely gain momentum in the coming days. In terms of technology, of course, whether there are design thinking tools which could be used for collaboration, they're perfectly suited for cognitive diversity, because it gives a non-linear structure to the thinking process and openness to external feedback. And you don't have to be a technical expert, to use a design thinking tool to take strategic decisions. So there's a visual space where you can build your ideas, you could test them, you could refine your ideas, and you could even expand the ambit of it beyond your workplace also by involving your customers or your other stakeholders. Of course, we talked about how we could use tools in recruitment to so that we not only hire a demographically diverse workforce, but we look at personality, skills, traits, etc., so that we have we ensure that there is no bias. Nobody is left out when assessing for talent. And it's not just the hiring, right? Moving on to the employee experience cycle, the career pathing, the leadership development, tools, platforms and tools surely, which could be diversity focused across the employee journey using artificial intelligence, organizational psychology, etc., will help. What I also feel is that the availability of the right data at the right time can significantly improve the collaboration within the various team members who are very dispersed currently, and currently we're all working in a virtual environment. But with the requisite set of tools, information, data available at the right time, with the help of by leveraging artificial intelligence, what is going to happen is that we're going to be empowering the employees to bring the best to every conversation, every brainstorming discussion, every conversation, and they'll be able to maximize their potential. So as I said, it's the art of thinking independently together is what, and using tools is what's there topmost in my mind.
Thank you. I love that. I love that expression where you said thinking independently together. And that's really at the heart of what cognitive diversity is really all about. Creating an environment, enabling an environment that allows people to work together. There is another concept that I came across called cognitive respect. Cognitive respect is really defined as an organization's ability to respect and value the views that are being put forth by every member of the team. And are we as organizations in the mode today where we are providing cognitive respect to our employees? Do they feel that? That again is a culture thing. Are you creating an environment that allows for that to happen? And the other thing that you said, which I think is extremely important, which resonates with me in particular, is empowerment. It's one thing to have everything by way of tools, by way of processes, everything there. But if people don't feel empowered to take those decisions, to be free to voice their opinion, it may not go anywhere. Let me go back to Rajendra I think You talked about, I think Anupama, it was you who talked about recruiting with a different frame of reference, different frame of mind today. We've what to me that represents is that we still operate in a little bit of in a sort of in a mold. We are finding it difficult to break free of that mold. And when you have recruitment happening, for example, across the organization, and the larger the organization, the more people that are involved in this, it's obviously difficult to break that mold. So my next question is really, how ready are organizations to break from the traditional mold in some of these areas and get past biases, mindsets, and dogmas? And obviously this is not going to be possible without the active support and belief of the leadership in organizations. And how ready are our leadership teams in recognizing the need for and promoting cognitive diversity and cognitive respect?
So, Murli, my one point that I wanted to speak about was that even when we talk about hiring people from, various other sectors, which is different from my sector, it is still a surface level decision that we are still taking. But the mind is wired differently. Now, I don't know whether, if I end up hiring a similar set of people, even from a different sector, the only thing that you're trying to, create, probably want to differentiate is that he's not in our mold of thinking with respect to the business, that this is how business happens. So he's not coming from that baggage. But is that a cognitive level, area that we are still addressing? In my mind, it is still a very surface level, decisions. In my mind, and correct me, and open to panel for correcting me if I'm wrong. See, there are people who operate largely. There would be 3 or 4 buckets within which the psychometrics assess individuals, and that's how they try and assess the natural wires of your mind, how it thinks. Now, somebody would be on execution, somebody would be on relationship, influencing, and strategic thinking, etc. Do we build the teams with that context, that if I have a neuro or a cognitive thinking, which is thinking execution, am I supplementing that with strategic? Am I supplementing that with execution? Am I supplementing with relationships? I think it is those kinds of, and that's how the perspectives will come around, which would be a different perspective. If we end up hiring the similar set of people from other companies, hoping that it's a very surface level decision, and therefore can AI, can machine learning, can all those applications, which actually looks at that, when you look at the psychometric assessments, I myself feel that I'm not equipped to really say, because there are so many variables in that report of psychometric assessment, that I'm not able to really predict the right end, the outcome that or the mindset or the cognitive capability that somebody is bringing on the table. And in the context that we are trying to put a role, whether that's the right set of, cognitive that we're bringing on board. So are we looking at cognitive, in certain buckets, and therefore adding complementary cognitive capabilities on board is something that, I would wish. And therefore, this whole piece around AI, all piece around machine learning, while a lot of those discussions happen, my only hope that, with this AI and machine learning, there's so much of variability in data that they are able to bring certain information and knowledge and decipher from a long reports that we get on psychometric assessment and tell us that this is what the person is all about, and therefore it's a good addition. And do managers also know that in their teams, what are the capabilities or cognitive capabilities that individual brings? Gallup is something that I practice, and I consciously try and bring, a guy with significance as a character or execution as a character. So one really needs to think through differently to break the bias of behavior and break the bias of skill. So somewhere we may be operating at breaking the bias of skill, and therefore going out and talk to people, beyond your industry domains and bringing people. But breaking the bias of behavior is something which is not external. It is all internal, and therefore that assessment has to happen.
Thank you. Thank you. As you were speaking, there was something that struck me. So let me ask Swati to respond to what the original question was. But let me also ask you this question, and this is for all the panelists. Is first of all, is this something that is this a skill that is acquired? Is it a skill that is innate, especially for managers? How do you get managers to recognize cognitive diversity that exists in their organizations and to leverage it? Is that something that requires some sort of intervention by the organization? What do you think?
So, thanks, Murli. Okay. Thanks, Murli. So, just to respond a little to what Rajendra was mentioning, while there are, I understand that you can't necessarily have, you use psychometry and, getting people of different mindsets. Now, it's very good to talk about it at a panel. But at the execution, if I'm building out a team for sales, and I say that I want cognitive diversity, and therefore I will bring in people who have a structured thought process, people who bring in rule following and are not necessarily relationship focused, I'm setting my organization for disaster. Because the people that are required in a sales team need a different mindset. What is important is across teams, you need to bring in the right, you need to use the psychometric tools in such a way that you bring in the right mindsets across various businesses where they are needed. I cannot bring an ops focused person into sales. I can't bring a strong relationship person in my ops team where rule following and a structured thought process. So to add to what Rajendra was saying, I think it's very important we use these psychometric tools very, very intelligently rather than setting ourselves up for failure. On the question you had about whether, what is it that the organization needs to do to help managers understand the cognitive diversity that is sitting in their teams. I think sometime a demonstration of that is necessary. So you might need to do a little bit of song and dance about it, but you need to drive this point home. And that's one of the things we are trying to do in our organization, to say, starting from the first time managers, how do we make them understand that you have 5 people in your team, but please understand they bring in multiple skill sets, and your role as their manager is to leverage on these 5 different skill sets that they bring and not hamper it. So some song and dance is required. I think a senior level demonstration of that is important. And therefore, listening to people, not making them, feel that they are being run down when they bring in different thoughts, and demonstrating that different thoughts that have come in have led to a beautiful, outcome and a productive, efficient outcome. And when you start demonstrating that, I think those demonstrations will slowly start seeping in. And, Gautam and Anupama spoke about culture. I think without the right culture in the organization, there is very little all of us can really do except talk about it. The culture of an organization will drive whether we are successful in this or not. So,
thank you, Swati. Let me ask the same question to Anupama. Are you seeing organizations being willing to get past or recognize that there are these dogmas, there are these biases, and are willing to look at changing things around, willing to give it a chance, willing to experiment? Or do you believe that people are so steeped in a particular way of doing things, in a particular frame of reference, frame of mind, that they are unwilling to make those changes?
No, so Murli, I really think that organizations are adopting and embracing cognitive diversity. So willing to do collective thinking, willing to do teamwork. And, to your question that do you need a policy to drive the leadership team to kind of follow or embrace cognitive diversity? I clearly think no. Like kind of Swati mentioned, maybe these policies are not really defined, but they kind of, good leaders or true leaders, they automatically kind of embrace it, because if you have to be successful as a leader and you have to be successful in your business, and I think we all would have seen this with the kind of experience all of us have collectively here on the panel, I think it's very, very important that you give due weightage to the teams that you work with. And, and it's a combination. So everything goes hand in hand. So today, if you are using a psychometric test or you're using a PI to hire someone, it doesn't end with that, right? It has to go beyond that. So you have to kind of ensure that how it gels with your thinking and a person coming. And I've seen it myself. When you hire someone from a different background, and for that matter, to Swati's point, I think getting someone from an ops background in sales, has worked wonderfully, for example, for us. So we gave it a shot and we said, okay, do we try this? Maybe being a little methodical, maybe being a little more compliant than a salesperson would be, and going a little by the book, does it really kind of work? That has worked. But yes, I agree with Swati, may not have worked in 100% of the cases, but it does kind of bring in a different flavor. So I think to have a combination of the best tools that are available, and I think for each of the leaders who lead their businesses to kind of follow it, by practice, by default, rather than following it as a policy, is something which will lead to the success of the organization clearly.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm just a little conscious of time. I think we have another 10, 12 minutes. So let me ask one more question, and then we'll probably open it up for the audience if they have any questions. So when I was doing a little bit of research and reading up, for this session, I came across a study by Deloitte and the Billie Jean King Leadership Initiative, which analyzed the responses of some 3,700 odd people from a variety of backgrounds on the topics of diversity and inclusion. And that study found that millennials in particular viewed diversity and inclusion through a lens of teamwork. For them, inclusion meant working in a collaborative environment where everyone's input and experience is valued. And we've spoken about this a few times on the panel discussion already on what it means from teamwork and collaboration standpoint. However, when you look at the Gen Xers, it was slightly different. This view contrasts with those from people of an older generation who tend to view diversity and inclusion through the lens of fairness, equity, civil rights, and so on. But it's also said that teams solve problems faster when they are more cognitively diverse. Now, with these different expectations from different demographics within an organization, and with the expectation that the millennials will make up a very large percentage of organizations' workforce, they already do today, but it's going to increase in the next 10 years. When you're going to have this difference in what the meaning of cognitive diversity is to different people within the organization, the managers have a view which is very different from what the next level and the upcoming managers are going to view this as. So what do you think, how do we cater to this new workforce is a question that I have, for both Gautam and Anuradha. Let me ask Gautam you first, and then we can go to Anuradha. And then I think we'll have a few minutes left for everybody on the panel to talk about this, because this is going to be important.
Yeah, thanks, Murli. And I think this is important. I think, if I really look at it, and I don't want to generalize, but I think millennials don't have the baggage that General X or baby boomers carry. I think they are more networked, they are more open, they are more collaborative in their approach, and willing to reach out across hierarchies or resolve problems and seek help. I think one of the things that has caused this is also because there has been a proliferation of technology platforms like Airbnb, rideshare and all, where they are so comfortable interacting, collaborating and networking that it has become it has got into their skin to do that. I want to share an example. In JSW, we use a very strong employee assistance program, which is open to employees and their families, and over 8,000 people actually are part of this whole thing. So at one point in time during the lockdown, I was asking for information in terms of how does what is slice and dice the data in terms of profiles and all that, not needing names. And it was interesting that more and more we found that millennials are reaching out for help and support, and reaching out to say how can we equip ourselves better than baby boomers and some of the Gen X people. And millennials don't look at it as a sign of weakness. They don't think that, something's wrong with me. Their belief is this is available. I think it can help me. I think I can, do better. And that's why I'm reaching out to that. So that's the, mindset that is coming. And I think this becomes important, very, very important at the leadership level. And I'm looking at leadership level both at the immediate supervisor and also at the leadership, which is at the CXO level. Because today we have a multi-generational workforce, and unfortunately today we still work with hierarchies where, most of the Gen X or the baby boomers are sitting on the top. So there is going to be a bit of a flux, as I see, for the next 5 or 7 years. And I think that will sort out by itself. But I think we are going to see a bit of a churn there happening, and cultures will begin to change, and and organizations will force to collaborate for the sake of business survival, is what I believe.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anuradha?
Sure. So Murli, the same study that you were referring to by Deloitte basically says that, for millennials, inclusion is the support for a collaborative environment. And 83% of the millennials are actively engaged when they believe that their organization fosters an inclusive culture. So for leaders in the organization top down, it is important to understand that if you are not actively including, you are accidentally excluding. So in their day-to-day interactions with the teams, they have got to ensure that they're actively including, they're exhibiting, they're walking the talk of inclusion from all aspects of diversity. So the millennial is surely looking for, supportive leadership who's exhibiting these aspects. So, we could do a training on inclusion, but I think that just won't suffice. There has to be a top-down approach, a program which we are running currently in our organization, which is the Inclusion Lab, which starts from the top. There are inclusion sponsors, inclusion champions, inclusion practitioners, and these are there is a framework which we have defined for inclusion, and we are driving this top down. And what we are giving opportunity to each individual is to say that in the meeting today, did I feel included or not? Or in this decision-making process, did I feel included or excluded? And there are open conversations that are happening on inclusion. And in surveys like Gallup or an employee engagement survey, we have specific questions on inclusion. We have questions in our 360 degree on inclusion. So when the millennial is seeing, that this is an important aspect for this organization at every stage, be it in my performance appraisal, I'm being asked, does your manager exhibit inclusive behaviors, right? So we're trying to permeate this as a culture in the day-to-day working at every level, because it will surely, we believe that it is, it prioritizes collaboration. It also fosters psychological safety for that millennial or anybody, any generation, that, this organization, views inclusive culture at the highest level and embraces it. So each leader is encouraged to, make statements on a regular basis in their town halls where the leader is exhibiting inclusion. So a policy or a guideline will not happen, but it has to happen in the day-to-day work. So unless you consciously include, you will unconsciously exclude, is what I would like to summarize.
Right. Great. Let me throw it open to all three of you, Swati, Rajendra, and Anupama, for some on this point. Let's talk a little bit. I think we'll have time for a minute each, perhaps before we wrap it up?
Yeah. So my view is that millennials are at the right time. I think coming years is all in their hands, and possibly in our generations we have followed. We have been adhering to what our parents told, and our kids, they will ask questions and they will be rebellious and they will have pinpointed questions without any apprehension of whether I'm asking the right question or wrong questions. So from their point of view, it is good that they have that whole ability to include others, and I think recognize who's contributing supplementarily into the whole overall decision making. So therefore, I think from that point of view, probably they will succeed in times to come. What is important for us is to continue to nurture the whole culture of compassion at leadership level. This whole compassion will ensure that inclusion by all of us, and facilitating or promoting the possibilities of explorations, building people with respect to. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Complete your thought.
Yeah. So I think these are some of the areas I think we need to allow people to come and even celebrate failures. The ideas if fail, celebrate all of that. I think that will help people to come up and probably distribute. So that's my 2 bit on this.
Thank you, Swati. Are we going to see an old order change it, yielding place to new sort of a thing happen as a natural progression in this, or is it? How do you see this happening?
So I just have 2 points. I know we're running short of time, so I will just restrict it to these 2 points. One is that the older generation, that is all of us sitting here in this room, were millennials of the past, right? And things did work for us. We found our own ways. The same thing is going to happen with the millennials of today. They are going to be the elders in another 20 years. And the millennials of that generation are going to look at them as the fuddy-duddies in their lives. Okay, so this is a chain in the human evolution. I think each one of us in the space that we are in will try and do our best to ensure that we are listening to each other and growing together. The second point I just wanted to make, and I'll make it in one sentence. We were talking of cognitive diversity. It could have helped to have a non-HR person also on this panel to hear a very different view. Thanks.
I think that's great feedback. That's great feedback. But I thought, Anupama, you said you're not HR. That's what I thought.
I'm not HR. I'm from the business, so I'm in a leadership role. I kind of lead the business.
Okay,
so there we've got diversity. Yeah. Okay. So let's wrap it up with Anupama's take on that particular point.
No, so Murli, clearly, I think millennials are going to be part and parcel of the workforce, and they're thinking differently and trying to bring in a change. I think is going to kind of promote cognitive diversity and help us innovate better as an organization. And that's what every organization is striving to kind of achieve today. Because today, if you don't think differently, you don't think fast, you don't adapt to changes. And I think COVID is an excellent example how each one of us have kind of made changes to kind of ensure that, we don't kind of get affected productivity-wise, but still do our best and give our best, right? And I think most organizations have succeeded. So clearly, I think that's going to be, it's going to kind of gel well within all organizations, all firms. And I think as organizations, we are pretty, kind of prepared to adopt the change, is what I think.
Wonderful. So I think our time's up. I want to thank everybody. I mean, I'd have liked to summarize, but I think we are past time. I think everybody said what needs to be said, and I think it's going to be very interesting times. I'd just leave it with that. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. We're going to see this as a very critical piece in organizations. Growth in innovation is going to be key, and if this is going to be a very critical instrument in helping organizations innovate, I think this is going to be important for companies to embrace. So thank you very much. It was a very, very interesting session. I had a really great time. I hope you all did, as well as the audience listening to us. Thank you very much. Over to you, Murli.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you, Murli, Anuradha, and Anupama, Swati. Thank you very much. Good catching up.
Ankita.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we truly loved and enjoyed listening to you all. Thank you so much to our moderator and also to our panelists. With that said, I hope you all had a fruitful day. I can vouch for sure for it. With that said, once again, a big thank you to all our attendees and more importantly to our sponsors for believing in us and especially in this initiative and for partnering with us. With that said, I would once again like to announce our presenting partners were Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited, our associate partners, AGS Health and Skillsoft. With that said, not forgetting our viewers, our attendees who've been with us since morning. So once again, thank you so much for joining us at IDC. Do not forget to visit us on our Twitter handle. Do not forget to read up the tweets and also do share your views on hashtag IDC, IDF. And with that said, we've come to an end of this amazing day. I can say fruitful and insightful day. And with that said, this is MC Ankita D'Souza signing off. Thank you.